The power of silent dignity becomes most visible when the world expects noise, reaction, or chaos. There are moments when a person's calm presence unsettles those who rely on authority alone, because authority can command obedience, but dignity commands respect. In situations where discrimination is disguised as procedure or hidden behind a polite smile, the loudest protest often comes from saying nothing at all. It is in that silence that truth becomes unavoidable, because there is no anger to blame, no aggression to point at, no outburst to exaggerate. There is simply a person standing firm in their worth, refusing to shrink, refusing to react the way the world expects someone in their position to react. And that refusal becomes a mirror, reflecting the injustice back onto those responsible. Silent dignity changes the balance of power because it removes the aggressor's favorite weapon, the ability to say you overreacted. It takes away their narrative, their excuses, and their ability to hide behind accusations of attitude, tone, or behavior. When a person stays calm in the face of discrimination, the spotlight shifts. Suddenly the system, the authority figure, or the biased individual has nothing to lean on except their actions, and when those actions are wrong, they are exposed in a raw and undeniable way. The silence becomes loud enough to echo through the room, the hallway, or even a crowded plane cabin. People start watching, not because of a confrontation, but because of the weight of the moment, because everyone senses when something unfair is happening, and calmness only amplifies the injustice. People who discriminate often rely on the expectation that the person they target will fold quickly, either out of fear, frustration, or humiliation. They count on the victim accepting things quietly because that's just how it is. But when someone stands their ground without raising their voice, it disrupts that expectation. The bias, which usually hides behind policies or authority, is suddenly forced into the open. The person in power begins to feel pressure, not from shouting, but from the undeniable truth that they are being observed while behaving unfairly. Human beings are deeply sensitive to being watched, and silent dignity makes the spectators more aware, turning them into witnesses. What makes silent dignity so powerful is that it doesn't fight fire with fire. It doesn't escalate. It doesn't give the aggressor the satisfaction of control. Instead, it introduces a different kind of resistance, one based on confidence, clarity, and self-worth. A calm person who knows their value is intimidating to those who try to undermine it. Their presence becomes a statement. Their silence becomes a stance. Their refusal to be rattled becomes a challenge the aggressor did not prepare for. Instead of a simple moment of discrimination that passes unnoticed, it becomes a moment that lingers, grows, and gains weight. In stories like this, when a passenger is replaced or treated unfairly, silent dignity can transform the situation. Instead of reacting with fury, the quietly confident individual forces everyone around to consider what is really happening. Other passengers start questioning the staff. The staff themselves begin second-guessing their choices. The atmosphere changes, slowing down, tightening, shifting focus. People who thought they could simply brush someone aside suddenly feel the gravity of accountability, even if no words are spoken. Silent dignity also reveals the character of the person experiencing discrimination. It shows wisdom, restraint, and emotional mastery. It demonstrates that strength is not always loud. Some of the strongest individuals in history moved nations without shouting, influenced change without confrontation, and stood firm without aggression. Their calmness was their armor. Their self-respect was their weapon. Their silence was their message. And when dignity stands tall, discrimination shrinks, exposed by its own weakness. In many ways, silent dignity is more than a response, it is a strategy. A way to reclaim control without engaging in arguments. A way to force the truth to surface without speaking it. A way to hold power without holding authority. It demands that others confront their biases, their decisions, and their behavior. It turns the moment into a lesson, even if the person targeted never intended to teach one. And the individuals who act with discrimination suddenly realize that they are not dealing with someone they can intimidate, but someone they must reckon with, someone whose silence speaks louder than any protest could. Authority fails the moment it is built on assumptions rather than understanding, and nowhere is this more visible than in situations where someone is misjudged before they even speak. When a person in power looks at someone and assumes they can be dismissed, ignored, or replaced, they reveal more about their own weakness than the strength of their authority. True authority requires awareness, fairness, and the ability to recognize human worth without bias. But when authority is fueled by stereotypes or entitlement, it becomes fragile. It cracks the moment it encounters someone who refuses to be reduced by surface-level judgment. The facade of power dissolves because authority without integrity is nothing more than an illusion waiting to be exposed. When a person is misjudged, especially in a public setting like an airport or airplane, the one making the assumption often believes their decision will be met with obedience. They expect compliance because they have grown accustomed to people bending under their words, titles, or uniforms. But misjudged power is reckless. It overlooks the possibility that the quiet passenger, the calm traveler, or the politely dressed individual may not only carry influence but may also possess a level of respect, responsibility, or authority that surpasses the person trying to control them. And when that realization hits, the imbalance shifts instantly. The one who assumes superiority finds themselves trying to regain footing, while the one they underestimated stands firmly rooted. The failure of authority begins long before the confrontation. It begins the moment assumptions replace facts. When someone looks at another person and makes decisions based on race, appearance, age, or demeanor, they are not exercising authority, they are exercising prejudice. That kind of authority is emotionally lazy. It doesn't consider context. It doesn't consider possibility. It doesn't consider reality. It only considers its own comfort and expectation. And when reality contradicts that expectation, the authority collapses. It cannot hold itself up because it was never built on truth. It was built on presumption. In moments like these, the person who is underestimated often becomes the silent judge of the situation. Their reaction, or lack of reaction, serves as the test that authority did not prepare for. A calm face, a steady posture, a refusal to argue, these simple behaviors create internal tension for those who realize they have misjudged the situation. Suddenly, authority begins to shrink. The tone of the staff changes. Their confidence weakens. They start searching for explanations that no longer make sense. They begin to realize that the person they mistreated carries a presence that demands respect without asking for it. And that respect is something fragile authority cannot handle. Authority that relies on bias becomes unpredictable under pressure. The moment the misjudged individual reveals their position, or when others in the room recognize the unfairness, the person in authority scrambles to repair the damage. They shift from commanding to explaining, from directing to justifying, from confident to uneasy. The role they once wore like armor now feels like a costume they are afraid will fall apart. They sense the eyes on them. They feel the weight of accountability. And they realize the cost of their assumption. This shift in energy exposes how weak authority becomes when it forgets the responsibility that comes with power. Misjudged power also reveals who truly holds influence. Some people carry authority not through titles but through presence. Not through uniform but through character. Not through position but through impact. These are the people who cannot be dismissed because their confidence radiates in subtle ways. When they are mistreated, the entire room feels the imbalance. When they are disrespected, the environment reacts before they do. When the truth of who they are becomes visible, the supposed authority fades in comparison. The person who underestimated them becomes acutely aware that they made a decision based on assumptions, and now they are paying the price through embarrassment, regret, or consequences that unfold publicly. The irony of authority built on misjudgment is that it tries to assert dominance but ends up exposing vulnerability. It seeks to control but ends up losing control. It tries to dictate but ends up being questioned. And all of this happens because it failed to pause, observe, and understand the person standing in front of them. It failed to consider that power is not always visible and that respect must be given before it can be received. The greatest mistake of flawed authority is believing that the surface tells the whole story, when in reality, it tells almost nothing at all. When someone is misjudged and responds with clarity, patience, or composed strength, their actions reveal the truth about the situation. The illusion of authority falls away, leaving only the plain, unfiltered reality of what happened. And in that reality, the one who made assumptions finds themselves exposed, their decisions laid bare, their behavior under scrutiny. Authority fails not because the person resisted, but because the authority itself was an error made visible through its own actions. Calm responses have a way of unsettling entire systems because they disrupt the expected pattern of conflict. When a person remains composed in the face of injustice or unfair treatment, it forces the environment around them to confront the truth without the distraction of emotion. Systems built on routine reactions rely on predictable behavior. They expect frustration, anger, or compliance because those reactions are easy to control, easy to dismiss, and easy to categorize. But calmness is different. Calmness is disobedient in a quiet way. It refuses to feed the system the energy it needs to continue functioning in the same flawed manner. It introduces stillness into a structure that depends on motion, and that stillness becomes a powerful form of disruption. When someone responds calmly, the people enforcing the system begin to second-guess themselves. They notice the absence of panic. They notice the absence of aggression. And that absence becomes a kind of pressure. They start questioning whether their actions were justified. They begin searching for validation in places where they would normally find none. Calmness denies them the emotional friction they are accustomed to, and without that friction, their decisions feel heavier, more exposed, more visible. It becomes impossible for them to hide behind accusations of behavior or tone. They are left facing their own choices with no shield to protect them. A calm response also reveals the strength of the person at the center of the situation. It shows that they are not reacting from emotion but from understanding. It demonstrates that they can see through the surface of the moment and recognize the deeper implications. Calmness is not weakness, it is the ability to regulate oneself even when treated unfairly. It suggests clarity of mind and a sense of self-worth that cannot be shaken by disrespect. And people who possess that kind of composure often hold a level of influence that unsettles those who try to undermine them. Systems that rely on authority or hierarchy are easily shaken by individuals who do not respond predictably. These systems depend on reactions to justify their next steps. If someone raises their voice, they can claim disorder. If someone argues, they can claim noncompliance. If someone protests loudly, they can shift attention to behavior rather than the actual issue. But calmness removes all excuses. It strips away the layers of justification and reveals the raw truth of the situation. And once the truth is visible, the system cannot hide behind its pre-written script. In a confined environment like an airplane, every reaction is amplified. People watch. People listen. They sense tension before they understand its cause. When a person responds calmly during a moment of unfair treatment, other passengers begin to tune into the situation. They observe the contrast between the individual's composure and the staff's decision. The calmness acts like a magnet for attention. Without a raised voice, without confrontation, the entire cabin becomes aware that something isn't right. And awareness is the first step toward shifting the dynamics of power. Calm responses also create uncertainty for those applying the rules. They wonder who they are dealing with. They wonder why this person is so composed. They wonder whether their assumption about the individual was wrong. That uncertainty grows with every steady breath, every measured word, every silent pause. It forces the system to reevaluate itself. It forces the decision-makers to reflect on whether their actions align with the principles they claim to uphold. Calmness introduces accountability without force, simply by refusing to react in the expected way. What makes calm responses so powerful is that they reshape the entire narrative. Instead of becoming the person who protested or caused a scene, the calm individual becomes the one who exposed the truth. They highlight the imbalance without shouting it. They reveal the bias without naming it. They shift the atmosphere simply by not allowing the situation to steal their peace. Calmness becomes the spotlight under which the system must now stand, revealing every flaw, every misjudgment, every unfair action. The ripple effect of calmness extends beyond the moment itself. It influences how others think, how they act, and how they interpret similar situations in the future. It teaches witnesses that strength comes in many forms. It shows them that dignity, composure, and emotional control can be more disruptive to injustice than confrontation. It demonstrates that even in moments of mistreatment, a calm response can create a shift powerful enough to challenge the system that caused the injustice in the first place. Calmness becomes both the shield and the strategy, turning what could have been a moment of silent suffering into a moment of silent power. Hidden influence is one of the most underestimated forces in human interaction, because people often assume that power is visible, loud, or announced. But real influence is the kind that does not need an introduction. It is carried in the way a person stands, the calmness in their voice, the steadiness of their eyes, and the certainty in their presence. Many people walk through the world holding a quiet kind of power that others fail to notice until the moment they try to undermine or dismiss them. It is in these moments that hidden influence reveals itself, not through aggression or confrontation, but simply through the undeniable weight of who the person truly is. Influence that does not require titles, uniforms, or loud declarations has a way of unsettling people who rely on surface-level judgments. When someone is overlooked or misjudged, the individuals doing the judging usually assume they are dealing with someone powerless. They believe the person will be easy to control, easy to talk over, easy to dismiss. What they don't see is the layers of experience, accomplishment, and inner strength beneath the surface. Hidden influence often belongs to people who have faced challenges, earned their success, and learned to move through the world with quiet confidence. These people do not need to announce their achievements. They do not need to showcase their authority. Their presence alone speaks louder than their words ever could. And when they are mistreated, that presence becomes a powerful counterforce to the unfairness they encounter. The interesting thing about hidden influence is that it reveals itself naturally, without effort. When someone with genuine inner strength is pushed into a corner or treated disrespectfully, they respond in a way that exposes the imbalance instantly. They don't shout or threaten. They don't try to prove themselves. Their composure, clarity, and unwavering calmness begin to shift the energy in the room. The person who tried to control them starts feeling a pressure they cannot explain. Something in the air changes. Something in the tone shifts. The realization sets in slowly at first, then all at once, they misjudged the wrong person. In environments like airports, offices, public spaces, or social settings, hidden influence becomes even more powerful because people are watching. When the person being mistreated remains calm and grounded, witnesses begin noticing the contrast. They observe the dignity of the individual compared to the questionable behavior of the authority figure. They start paying attention to the small details, the measured tone, the thoughtful pauses, the confidence that doesn't waver. Hidden influence begins to draw attention naturally. It gathers silent support from those who recognize authenticity when they see it. And without saying a word, the person who was dismissed becomes the center of gravity in the room. People with hidden influence often carry themselves with a certain kind of quiet assurance. It is the assurance of someone who has nothing to prove and nothing to fear. They know who they are. They know what they bring to the table. They understand their value in a way that does not depend on anyone's validation. This makes them incredibly powerful in situations where others try to strip them of dignity or control. Their self-worth is not negotiable, and that alone disrupts the plans of anyone who assumes they can manipulate the situation. Hidden influence becomes a shield, not because it blocks conflict, but because it reveals truth. Another aspect of hidden influence is the way it forces systems and individuals to hold themselves accountable. When a person with quiet power is treated unfairly, their response, or even their silence, becomes a mirror reflecting the system's flaws. The individuals enforcing the rules suddenly realize that they might have crossed a line. They feel the discomfort of uncertainty, the weight of scrutiny, and the sting of embarrassment. They become aware that the person they attempted to control may have more authority, more respect, or more social weight than they anticipated. This realization often leads to hesitation, backtracking, or attempts to cover mistakes. Hidden influence is also rooted in authenticity. People who possess it do not pretend to be powerful, they simply embody it. Their influence comes from character, intellect, integrity, and experience rather than from external symbols. This kind of influence cannot be taken away because it does not rely on outward labels. It is internal, earned, and deeply embedded in the person's identity. Because of that, when they are underestimated, the correction is swift and startling. Those who misjudge them are forced to reconsider their assumptions and confront the consequences of their bias. What makes hidden influence so impactful is the way it transforms moments of discrimination or unfairness into lessons. Without lecturing, without arguing, without boasting, the person reveals the truth about who they are. They turn the situation into a demonstration of character that echoes far beyond the moment. Those who witness it walk away with a different understanding of strength. They learn that real power is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not need applause. Real power simply exists, steady and unmistakable, waiting for the moment when it must finally be seen. Respect is not something that should be given only when someone looks important or carries a title. True respect is a baseline expectation, a fundamental human right that should be extended to every person regardless of appearance, background, or status. Yet there are moments when people in positions of authority treat respect as if it is conditional, something to be granted selectively or only after they believe the person has earned it. But the truth is, respect is demanded through presence, character, and dignity long before it is requested through words. When someone stands confidently, when they refuse to be diminished or overlooked, they send a message without speaking it. They are not asking for respect, they are expecting it. And that expectation changes everything. When a person carries themselves with self-respect, it becomes very difficult for others to mistreat them without feeling the weight of their own actions. Self-respect radiates subtly but unmistakably. It can be seen in the way someone holds eye contact, the steadiness of their voice, the control in their posture. These signals are not aggressive or confrontational, yet they are powerful enough to unsettle anyone who tries to impose unfairness. People sense when they are dealing with someone who refuses to be intimidated. They sense when they are dealing with someone who values themselves deeply. And that sense alone forces them to reconsider their approach. Demanding respect does not mean being loud or forceful. It means establishing a boundary through quiet certainty. It means showing people that you will not allow yourself to be pushed aside simply because someone else believes they can do so. In situations like being asked to move from a seat, being spoken to dismissively, or being treated as if your presence is insignificant, people often expect a submissive reaction. They assume the individual will comply, apologize, or step aside to avoid conflict. But when someone stays calm and firm, when they make it clear through their composure that they recognize their own worth, the dynamic shifts instantly. Respect stops being optional and becomes necessary. There is a profound difference between a person who requests respect and a person who embodies it. Those who request it often feel the need to explain why they deserve it, to justify their presence, or to prove their value. But those who embody it need no explanation. Their energy does the work for them. Their silence carries authority. Their confidence creates a boundary that others can feel even if nothing is said. This kind of presence disrupts the assumptions of anyone who tries to treat them unfairly. It causes hesitation. It creates discomfort. It forces reflection. Because suddenly, the person who seemed easy to dismiss now appears impossible to disrespect without consequences. Respect is demanded not through confrontation but through consistency of character. The individual who refuses to be shaken, who remains steady even when provoked or belittled, shows a strength that many people underestimate. This strength does not rise to meet disrespect, it stands above it. It makes the one delivering the disrespect feel small in comparison. And in environments where power dynamics are uneven, this kind of strength becomes even more visible. When a flight attendant, officer, manager, or supervisor attempts to assert authority unfairly, the calm, dignified person exposes the imbalance simply by refusing to shrink. When respect is demanded through presence, those in authority often react with confusion at first. They expect compliance, but instead they encounter steadiness. They expect frustration, but instead they encounter clarity. They expect someone to fold, but instead they encounter someone who remains firmly grounded. This unexpected response causes a shift. Suddenly, the authority figure must reevaluate their behavior. They begin reconsidering their assumptions. They start imagining the possible consequences of mistreating this particular individual. The confidence of the other person creates a kind of pressure that cannot be ignored. People who demand respect carry an energy that sets the tone for the entire interaction. Other passengers, bystanders, or co-workers pick up on this energy as well. They notice the imbalance. They sense the injustice. And they begin to lean toward the person who stands with quiet confidence. Respect becomes contagious in such moments. Witnesses feel compelled to support or at least question what is happening. The presence of one strong individual can influence the entire environment, shifting the collective attitude toward fairness and accountability. Demanding respect also means refusing to internalize someone else's disrespect. It means understanding that poor behavior reflects the character of the one delivering it, not the one receiving it. This understanding protects the individual from emotional harm. It keeps them centered. It allows them to maintain dignity even when others fail to offer it. And this unwavering dignity eventually forces those who initiated the disrespect to confront their own actions, because they can no longer justify them through exaggeration, assumptions, or emotional reactions. The calm, self-assured individual leaves no room for excuses. They reveal the truth through the way they carry themselves, through the way they stand, and through the unspoken message that respect is not something they are waiting for, it is something they already possess within themselves, and others must recognize it. Whether though underestimating someone is one of the most common mistakes people make because it is based on appearances, assumptions, and incomplete understanding. People often rely on superficial indicators, age, race, attire, title, or demeanor, to gauge strength, capability, or influence. They assume that those who appear quiet, unassuming, or polite are powerless, when in reality, these are often the people with the greatest reserves of strategy, patience, and determination. Underestimation is dangerous because it blinds people to the potential consequences of their actions and leaves them unprepared for responses they cannot control. When someone who is underestimated steps into their true power, the reaction is often shock, confusion, and, in many cases, regret. The first consequence of underestimation is a failure to respect boundaries. When people assume someone cannot assert themselves, they feel free to impose, manipulate, or override their position. They speak louder, push harder, and make decisions without consideration, believing that compliance is inevitable. But when the person being underestimated does not conform to these expectations, the imbalance becomes immediately apparent. The authority that seems secure begins to waver because it was never based on actual understanding, it was based on a false premise. And the longer the assumption persists, the greater the shock when reality confronts it. Underestimation also misleads those in power into thinking they hold the upper hand. They anticipate certain behaviors, fear, submission, or visible discomfort, that they can exploit. They are confident in their ability to predict outcomes, and that confidence emboldens them to act in ways they might not otherwise. But when the underestimated individual responds thoughtfully, strategically, or with calm authority, it disrupts all expectations. Their composure becomes a mirror, reflecting the mistakes, misjudgments, and biases of those who assumed they could be controlled. What was intended as dominance is transformed into exposure, revealing weakness under the guise of authority. One of the most remarkable aspects of being underestimated is the opportunity it provides. When someone is wrongly assumed to be powerless, they gain the advantage of surprise. The world is conditioned to respond to force with force, to arrogance with arrogance, and to intimidation with compliance. But the underestimated person operates outside of these assumptions. Their moves are unpredictable, their strategies unanticipated, and their presence more impactful precisely because others fail to account for it. The initial misjudgment creates a vacuum of expectation, and into that vacuum, the underestimated individual can assert influence, correct injustice, or reclaim control in ways that seem sudden but are in fact deliberate and composed. Underestimation is often tied to prejudice, bias, and systemic assumptions, and those who fall victim to it are frequently treated as exceptions or anomalies when they resist. People who underestimate others rarely anticipate intellect, creativity, resilience, or calm authority. They overlook the subtle forms of power that do not announce themselves loudly but nonetheless shape outcomes profoundly. And when they are confronted with evidence that they misjudged someone, the emotional impact can be significant. There is embarrassment, there is cognitive dissonance, and there is a need to reassess decisions made under flawed assumptions. In this way, underestimation serves as both a trap for the overconfident and a revelation for the observant. The underestimated individual often wields their strength quietly, allowing others to reveal themselves through their misjudgments. This approach is effective because it does not provoke unnecessary confrontation but rather exposes flaws naturally. By maintaining composure, patience, and clarity, they force others to confront the reality of their assumptions. The very act of standing firm while being underestimated magnifies their presence, creating a psychological impact that authority cannot replicate through title alone. Their influence grows not by demanding recognition but by existing in a state of undeniable competence and self-assurance. Underestimating someone is not only a mistake, it is a miscalculation that has tangible consequences. Decisions made on false assumptions can backfire, authority can be undermined, and credibility can be lost. When someone responds with measured intelligence, unwavering calm, and strategic action, the person who underestimated them often experiences a profound sense of surprise, helplessness, or even fear. They recognize too late that they misread the situation, the individual, and the potential for repercussions. The underestimated individual transforms what might have been a moment of marginalization into a moment of empowerment, demonstrating that appearances and assumptions rarely capture the full scope of human capability. Those who underestimate others fail to appreciate that true strength is not always visible. It is found in patience, resilience, strategic thinking, and self-assuredness. It is revealed in the ability to remain calm while chaos surrounds them, to stand firm when others attempt to displace them, and to respond in ways that turn the tables on those who misjudge. Underestimation underestimates not only the person but also the ripple effects their response will create, because when someone proves that they cannot be diminished by assumption, it shifts not only the immediate situation but also the perception of everyone who witnesses it. The miscalculation of underestimating someone becomes a lesson in humility, accountability, and the hidden power that exists in quiet, deliberate confidence.